Good morning, everybody. Just for my own interest and to get kind of like tuning into the settings, we've seen these great keynotes so far. I've walked into one and they were mentioning the citizen data scientists. This is actually a talk about citizen data science in the sense that we've been working as a company with a lot of customers who had data science and Hadoop people on staff. And they've had great issues in work having these two groups of people together. So I wanted to get a feeling of what the composition of this room basically is. Who is on the IT side, the Hadoop side of things? Can you raise your hand? Oh, just a few of them. Who is more on the data science side of things? Okay. And who feels themselves on the business side of things? Like trying to achieve some real tangible goals, budget requirements and such. I think there's a bit of it for all of you. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Steven Oels. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of NG Data. We're a Belgian/US company working, developing a software product which is called Lily, which is a customer analytics data management platform, scoring customer profiles and allowing you to use it in a variety of use cases around, very generally speaking, customer experience management. We've been at this for 3 years now, and we have an employee composition which is very similar to the room. We have people on the Hadoop side of things, software engineers. We have people who are doing data science for a living. And then we have some business people. We have some of our colleagues who are doing the operational marketing for large telco companies. And we found out that having these three groups of people working together allows you to really be efficient and productive in defining a product which is designed to serve all that. And I wanted to take you a bit through the journey of how we came there, how we got there, and this is obviously all about what we call customer conversation modeling. Now, to take a step back, when we were coming over to here, by car, by plane, whatever, we've been sending data off to the Googles and the Facebooks of this world. Even driving our car, collecting data for Waze, and so on and so forth. We have been using and adopting the technologies and especially the services of these large internet companies for a long time now. And we've come to be, we've become that way, very highly expecting consumers of service providers. What do I mean with that? When we are trying to engage with a customer, let's assume that you're all serving customers at some point, it's not so much only like 10 years ago when everybody was talking about web personalization and online personalization and sending out coupons and all these kind of things. It's not just important to understand who is the right customer to approach with what kind of message. It's also become very important to get the context right. When are we going to engage with a customer? To give you a little example, let's assume you're a banking customer. We all are. At some point, you might be considering switching a bank. So you go from one bank to another, which is, for a bank, it's a bad thing to happen, of course. Usually, predicting when a customer is going to churn, to move away from you as a bank, that obviously requires looking at historical data. But that also, if you want to work on that, for instance, if somebody has the intent to leave you as a customer, it's obviously really important if you want to present a marketing offer to him or get him just on the phone and have a conversation about his not being happy with the service that you're providing, to do so at the right time. What you see with banks is that typically they will score all of their customers on their propensity to churn, their propensity to walk away on a monthly basis, or sometimes even only on a quarterly basis, which leaves your customers with more than a month, at least a month, and sometimes more time to actually move away without you being able to see it happen. And without you being able to work on that and try to re-engage with the customer in a meaningful way. Now, this is a marketing story, of course, but it's actually all about customer experience. You want to provide the best possible customer experience. However, when doing so, it's not just about the right message to the right customer. It is specifically much more about when to do so. It is of no sense and actually highly costly to send a renewal or a loyalty renewal offer to somebody who has already left the bank or left the telco provider. So we as customers have come to expect a great service. We've been spoiled in that way by the Facebooks and the Googles of this world because they always come up with very contextually relevant information to us. And I think what we all need to be looking into, and that's basically what I want to explain to you, is how could you do that, not being Google, not being Facebook, but as a bank, as a telco, as a retailer, working and engaging with the customer in a productive way. And what you see is, for customers, experiencing the services of a bank is an ongoing journey. It's basically, they become a customer at some point, so you have to acquire the right customers. They will ask for some advice to you. You will going to present them with a number of products. They might be interested in that, might not be interested in it. They're going to buy that or not going to buy that, and so on and so forth. But we as consumers are really looking into this as a very, we're very egoistical or egocentrical in this thing. We expect that if we have a problem with some bank service, we get onto the website, we try to file a complaint. There's a complaint form on the website. You're going to file that complaint on the website. The complaint form is broken. What are you going to do at that point? You pick up the phone, you call into the bank. We all know you're going to be routed 20 different steps in a voice menu, end up with a call center agent which doesn't know about you, doesn't really understand the ordeal that you just went to. So we expect the conversation and the interaction that we have with a bank or with a telco company or with a media company selling you subscriptions, basically, to have that done, always aware of what was just happening with you and what you were experiencing as a customer a minute before, 5 hours before, a day, a week, maybe even a couple of years before. So the conversation that a consumer has with a large service provider is always, he sees that in a very different way than the service provider does. The service provider thinks about, these are the products that I want to sell, these are the services that I want to sell, these are the complaints that I want to manage, and oftentimes they lose context and they lose track of the fact that they have actually, if they have 1 million customers, they have 1 million conversations with 1 million individuals, and they want to make sure that the whole conversation that they have is aligned and relevant and contextually okay for each individual customer separately. The other thing that we see is working with banks, working with these telcos is, well, there's a lot of marketing programs going on around acquiring the right customers, around preventing customers to walk away, with things like providing the next best offer. So we have a customer, for instance, a quad-play telco provider who is selling both internet service, landline, mobile, and so on. And he has this idea, I want to have all my customers to be acquiring all the different products that I have and that I'm providing to them. So they're really trying to upsell and cross-sell the right products to the right person. What you see is oftentimes this all happens with separate marketing programs, with separate customer service programs, and these people who are running these operations, the marketing people, who then go into the IT people, and they ask for, can you provide me a list of customers who might be interested in getting on this mobile subscription, or what are the people who don't have a ongoing internet subscription with us, all these kind of things. Basically, you see that all these efforts become very isolated. What we suggest there, if you want to do this in the right way, you want to have a central customer data platform in your organization, which obviously big data, Hadoop technology is an ideal substrate for. That cannot just one single marketing use case, one single customer experience use case, but actually supports a variety of different use cases at the same time from one central data management platform. So it's really important to be able to have all the data at your disposal to focus and bring a consistent message related to the context of every individual customer, and it's really important to make sure that the data that you have about your customer, that data is centrally organized to support multiple use cases. These are two really important things to see. Now, how you do that? We call that customer conversation modeling. It's, from a surface point of view, seems pretty simple, and we actually try to make it simple, of course. First of all, you have to identify the customer that you're engaging with, which can be challenging in a multi-channel context. You have people coming to your branch offices. If you're a bank, people visiting your website, people using your mobile services. So you really need to be able to identify the individual customer across all these different channels. The other thing is profiling the customer, so have a collection of interesting information about each individual customer that can serve all these different use cases, then analyzing the behavior of the customer, and then making sure that you're able to act on that data. And that's actually one of the recurring themes, and I'll talk more about it in a second, but one of the important things there is Hadoop is more than analytics, because analytics has this sense of, well, we are going to do some fancy Spark or MapReduce if we're a bit old-fashioned, and we're going to run some programs. We're going to build a little application to derive value or insights from a data lake. I'm sure you've all heard this joke before, but a lake, if you're there with a small MapReduce boat, it's a treacherous thing. You need to be careful that you don't drown in a lake. Yeah? The funny thing with all this Hadoop stuff, it's all about large surfaces of water. Now, large surfaces of water can be dangerous if you don't have a clear compass, if you're not really sure where you are at in your data exploration. So what you see happening with Hadoop is people are building analytical applications, and that's where they stop. They create a great PowerPoint at the end. They create a report. They have some nice visualization, some Tableau stuff, and so on. And that's it. And so they do that every week, every month. And they do that not at the frequency that new data is becoming available. They do that at the frequency that the board meetings are happening, because that's when they want to report on their insights of their Hadoop environment. Now, that's not very actionable. You really want to use that data in a real-time fashion to steer that conversation with the customer, so that the call center who picks up the phone and has this disgruntled customer on the line who says, I tried to fill in a complaint form and even that is not working on your website, that you can pick up the conversation then and say, hey, we know who you are, we know where you are, we know what to do with your complaint. So the aspect of actionability is obviously very important. Now, there's more to be told about the different steps. First of all, identifying the customer in a mixed mode world where you have both online anonymous visitors as well as known customers who have, which you have an existing relationship with. You have some data stored in a CRM. So you need to bring a lot of different data sources together. Another really interesting challenge there is to manage the fact that we all have multiple devices these days. So we need to track you and identify you across your mobile phone, across your laptop, across you sitting at home. And actually it gets worse. A lot of these service providers, they have devices which represent multiple users or multiple individuals. Think about a set-top box at home. The television doesn't know who's in front of that. It could be just you, it could be you and your partner, it could be you, your partner, and your children. You can somehow understand that the viewing behavior of Wednesday night 2 a.m. is probably not the kids at home, and that Wednesday afternoon it's the kids which are watching, but these are assumptions that you're making, so it can be challenging to really identify a customer in a very correct way. Having more data available obviously helps you with that. Then onto the profiling. What we firmly believe in is that you don't design, we have a bunch of data scientists here, but you don't design your list of variables that you're going to use to train your model use case by use case. There are a number of metrics, and actually a large collection of metrics, which come back with every other use case that you're trying to support. So what we suggest there is you define these metrics up front. You're going to fill up these profiles consisting of all these metrics straight from the start. So that we found out at some point in the life cycle of our company, we acquired a business intelligence company These people all got a pay rise after that, because they used to be data analysts and business BI people. Suddenly they became data scientists, and you know that they are paid better. So that was a free pay rise for these people. But what we also found out is these were the smart math brains of the company. They were spending 60 up to 70% on data preparation. Nothing else than collecting data, talking with the database guys, talking to the data warehouse guys, and say, I need to do something. I need to build a model predicting the likeliness that customers are going to walk away. I need some lists of previous transactions, and so on and so forth. So they spend a lot of time on preparing data, getting the data ready for their analysis. So building out these customer profiles from the start, rather obviously with the use cases in mind, rather than do that use case by use case, obviously becomes really important. What is also important is looking at that data in a continuous timeline. You can score, if you're able, if you have the technology, and with Hadoop the technology is there, you can score your customers for churn propensity or likeliness that they can be upsold something. You can score them on a continuous basis if you have the data available, if you have the technology available. And that actually is going to align the moment that you are going to present an offer to a customer better with when it is contextually relevant for them. So we got the customer profiling going on, and I'll be showing a concrete example of that in a second. And then we need to see, we have up to 1,000 different metrics of every individually identified customer now. We now need to track these metrics and see how they evolve over time. I think there, realizing seasonality, for instance, that people have different behavior buying things during work days, in the week, or in the weekends, that they have different shopping behavior when working or when they are on holiday is kind of like obvious, but a lot of people kind of like lose track in that. They all boil it down to the same variables, and that's obviously not working. The other thing is, looking at the values is kind of interesting, but see how they evolve and what trend or change is there and how fast that change is going can be much more interesting. Think about the story I told you about that person who was thinking about switching a bank. Yeah? If you are familiar with regression models, so you know you have a number of metrics which are going to define the likeliness that you're going to leave that bank. Being able to track all of these driver metrics, which could be simple things like how many times does a person visit the website of the bank on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? How many times is he checking his account balance using the mobile application? How many times is he actually transferring money into that account? Now, if you see changes in all these metrics on the individual customer level, you can imagine if some things are starting to change, if they're going up or going down, that could be a signal for, okay, something is happening here. Looking at that data, seeing it evolve in real time, over time, is something which is really important. And then the last thing, as I mentioned, actionability. Get out of the data lake. You have your data lake now. You have your little boat rowing on the big lake. Be careful. Don't stick there just generating more reports for the board meeting. Make sure that you're looking at data as a way to activate, to drive processes in your company. So that if I stop looking into my account balance after a couple of days, there's a message sent to the call center queue. Get on the phone with that customer. He's not, no. We need to be careful, of course, not to become too creepy. So there's a lot of business sense and marketing rules around that as well, of course. But being able to capture these signals and to translate them into events, taking the action, the initiative yourself is obviously very important. What we see is that a lot of marketing operations are only working when the customer presents himself, when the customer visits the website, when the customer visits the branch of the bank, when the customer calls into the call center. That's wrong. You should have your continuously evolving customer profile inside your organization at all time, so that you also can act on when a customer becomes less active, when he is not present, when you are able to take the initiative. Now, there's a bunch of marketing use cases that you can imagine around this. Thinking about the whole switch from what we used to be doing as marketing people, outbound marketing, email campaigns. The reason why our delete button on our keyboard is actually already a bit rough in the sense that, yeah, we've got so much of this outbound communication. We don't read that. We don't act on that anymore. What we expect is when we visit the website that we are being confronted in a pleasant way with a relevant offer, with a relevant message, with a relevant conversation coming from the service provider. So obviously, there's still, if you have these carefully crafted individual level profiles with a clear set of interesting metrics, you can use that to improve your mass marketing. You can make sure that you're sending more campaigns to smaller groups of people with a more relevant information or a more relevant message. So that ultimately, if you can do that in a more efficient way, can help improving your outbound initiatives a lot. The other thing is working with individual customers. You cannot work with individual customers if you don't have an individual customer profile. To give an example of that, a bad example, how it should not be done, I visited a shopping website 2 weeks ago, and I made a purchase on that shopping website. So that's great. They should be happy. I am now being tracked already for 2 weeks on all the other websites which use the Google ad network with a banner, an ad for the product which I have already bought. Now that's systematic. It's an endemic problem in the sense that you know that the profiles which are managed on the Google ad network, they are not in sync with the profile that you have internally. So being sure that you have these individual customer profiles and track individual purchases, and to stop doing these broad-based ad campaigns, which are not very targeted and actually not very efficient, is going to contribute to the fact that you will be perceived as being less creepy. Because now I think the shopping website is creepy. It's following me, and it's even following me with irrelevant information. Obviously, on inbound, having that individual customer profile, it will help you to have a good personalized message when the customer is present, online or on the service desk. But let's take a look first at how this profile could look like. And for that, I brought my good friend with me, Anthony. He's actually one of our lead developers in the company, and he's going to help me in presenting a little demonstration of that profile. Anthony? It woke up. Should I be? I knew I had to have you around.
Let's just do it the easy way.
Will that work?
Auto resync here in a second.
That was fast.
There we go.
See, this is Anthony. He's the best man in the world. So what I'm showing you here is our product, which is doing this individual level customer profile. But I wanted to show you how we approach things differently there. This is what you would expect to have in any kind of marketing application. You have segments or sets about all of your customers, the customers who are in that segment, in another segment, and so on and so forth. So that's interesting, and that's what people have been using for years now. It's like they assign you to a segment, and that's how that defines what kind of offers that you will be receiving, and so on and so forth. Now, if you look into this, and then the next problem will be that my network has died on me. See, live demos are always so scary. Yeah, network died. Anyway, I will not spend time on that. Ultimately, what I wanted to show you, and I don't have any backup slides on that, is building out these profiles. You don't start with segmentation. You don't start with profiling. You actually start with tracking individual interactions from individual customers in a sense that you do so online data getting in, click streams getting in, information about payments coming in, all these kind of things, and you project that into individual profiles. There might be, nope, that's what happens. Okay, Anthony, we're going to switch back to the presentation. Sorry about that. Huh? Should we? It's, mm-hmm. Do? Okay, so. Yeah, a bit embarrassing. So let's look into one of these segments. These are all metrics which you see defined as an average of all the members which are part of that segment. Now, it's, for instance, this is a banking example. You got the number of debit purchases that somebody makes on a monthly basis, some predictive model-based scores, whether somebody is a value shopper. This is the total amount of credit purchases that somebody has been making over the last 90 days. So you can imagine there's thousands of different of these metrics that you could make up like that. Now the point is, this is where it stops on the Google side of things. And banks actually don't like to bring their customer data to Google. They want to keep their customer data and the information and the profiles about the customers, they want to keep it internally into their organization. So what we provide them there is, okay, let's work not just with segments and personas, let's work with individual customers. There is a member list of all the people who are part of this new worldly adapters, which is the name of a marketing segment that we defined. So let's take a look into the individual customer DNA, as we call it, of Sandra Rich. We see the same metrics reappearing. So you can imagine, if you see the metrics on the segment or the set level, they are actually the combined average of the members of that set. Now, having access to these metrics at the individual level buys you a whole lot of interesting things to make your conversation more contextually relevant. You have some small indicators here saying, okay, Sandra has been unhappy because she has two complaints registered on the website, yeah? And actually that number has been rapidly increasing over time. So now is the time not to send an email or to launch a campaign against the segment that she belongs to, but to Sandra herself, her individual self. And how do we do that? Well, basically we collect interaction level data, so really low level data, every account transaction that she has been making, every purchase that she has been making across all the different channels that the bank is providing for her, tracking that and calculating that into metrics. So we're not starting from a segmentation model thinking about we have 10 different types of customers. No, if we have 1 million customers, we will have 1 million types of customers. They are individually identified. We are tracking their individual interactions, and we're building out, calculating these metrics out of that. Thank you, Anthony. We'll go back to the slides now. So how do we do that? Obviously, we do that with Hadoop, and it requires a number of steps. So it requires us to bring in interaction data and bring in a number of CRM data as well to calculate that in a calculation engine. Now we have the DNA, but the story doesn't end there because DNA is not actionable. You really want to have an event generating system, and this gets me to the techie bit of the presentation. You want to make sure that you monitor how each individual metric for each individual profile evolves, and to define alerts when a metric passes a certain threshold. And then that threshold is passed, we get an event generated, that ends up in an alert monitor because you want you want to have alerts coming out of that to say this specific customer has a problem. There's his happiness metric is below a certain value which is predefined. And then you need to apply business rules to that, to the outcome of that, the event, the alert which is detected, to decide what are you going to do with it. Are you going to call him? Or are you going to send him an email? Well, actually, you can decide that looking at the metrics, how engaged is he or she on the online channel, on the email channel, on the phone channel, so to speak. So if you have access to all these metrics, defining rules how to engage with individual customers becomes obviously really interesting as well. Now, I wouldn't be here at Hadoop Summit if there wouldn't be like, okay, so what are you using for that? Well, we're bringing in this interaction data using Flume. I think everybody knows that. It's an easy way to bring in loads of data into a Hadoop cluster. We're storing that interaction data into HDFS, of course. Now, why do we store these interaction data? Well, first of all, if you have suddenly a new ID for a new metric, because you can configure these metrics yourself, you can go back to all the historical interaction data to configure the new metric and to fill it up with all the historical data that you've collected on Hadoop. These profiles need to be managed over time. So we have these metrics at the profile level. We do that using HBase. You need to bring data into HBase on the customer, for instance, his gender, his age, his name if you want. You need to have easy access into HBase so that uploading data becomes easy. So we're using Phoenix for that. You need to expose that DNA not just to your marketing engines, but also to your business intelligence engine so that you can connect into it with Tableau or Business Object or whatnot. So we're using Calcite for that. We need to listen into the big queue of metric updates, which is continuously being calculated inside that chain. And we're using Kafka for that, so which is a queuing mechanism, a highly scalable and reliable queuing mechanism in the Hadoop ecosystem. And you got some administrative tasks running, which are being managed or where configuration is stored and state is stored in Zookeeper. And then obviously you need to have that data available for machine learning, data learning experiments for which we provide Spark access into the data. So that within Spark you can pull up the customer profile or the customer profile of 1 million different customers. It scales well, it distributes well, and you can do your own data science experiments again. But with better prepared data, because you don't have to go back to the raw data sources, it's all already organized on a per customer level. Now, having access to this kind of data in an efficient way, as you remember, it's stored in HBase, we defined a very specific way of storing data in HBase. The easy one is we have one row per customer in HBase. So if you have 10 million customers, you have 10 million rows in HBase. And each row contains a number of cells which, quite specifically configured, manage interaction level aggregates at the individual customer level in a multitude of dimensions. Because you can imagine there's the dimension of time. I want to see what somebody's average online activity, the number of clicks on the website is on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. If you manage that on a daily basis, you can calculate the weekly and the monthly out of that very quickly. It's just an additive operation. But actually the same is also happening if you look into other dimensions of organizing data and organizing interaction aggregates. If somebody is visiting the website and you have a multitude of content categories or different categories of pages on your website, well, actually that becomes another dimension. You got news, you got sport, you got media, you got video content. That becomes another dimension just as time. And actually we have that for any dimension that you define yourself. So if you want to do an interaction aggregate, which they are called in our product, on the usage of the different banking products, that list of banking products becomes yet another dimension that you can add to that same profile for every individual metric. So the benefit of this on a technical level is that this updating the structure in real time and loads of data are coming in, and we're really talking about thousands, 10,000 sometimes interactions per second per node of a large volume of customers, both click streams and payment streams, for instance. It is very efficient to update this kind of data structure and have all that data available. If you want to pull out a metric, it's a very small and simple additive operation, and you can get a lot of different metrics out of that same data structure. Now, to give you a little bit of overview of the kind of interesting conversational metrics that you would have, because this is ultimately about managing metrics on the customer conversation, continuously scoring every individual customer what would be the next best offer to make say you have 10 different offers or 10 different products that you're selling, have a continuous view on, okay, for these 10 product categories or these 10 different products, what is the score for every individual customer that, yeah, defines the propensity or the adequacy of bringing that product to the customer. So that at some point, if the customer is present online, on the call center, whatever, it becomes very easy to say, okay, this is what you need, because we just take a ranked list of the scored next best actions, and we do that. But also predicting what would be the best step, next step in the conversation. Think about the timeline that I showed you, all the different things from acquisition to preventing churn. You have all these different steps in the customer conversation to define, okay, this is what you need to do now. This is, he currently has access to 3 products, sell him the 4th product. It's the best possible time to do that based on his behavior and also based on what you've learned from other customers in the organization. We always say when we're talking to customers, they have great predictive models in place to define what is the best possible product to sell, to define how to prevent churn, to define what are the best possible customers to acquire. The problem they have is not so much the data science that sits within a bank. These people have been doing this for 15, 20 years already, rating every customer on risk, on fraud, on these kind of things. Yeah? So they have great data science in place. The problem is data availability, having very accurate, very detailed, individual level customer profile data available, so that the existing wisdom of defining great predictive models, defining what you're going to do with the customer and why you are going to do it with the customer, is influenced and guided by behavioral data, so the actual customer behavior, which is going to define you and help you in deciding when you need to engage with the customer and how, through which channel you need to be engaging. So making sure that you have the combination of, let's say, the old data science and the new data science using that Hadoop stack and that real-time processing technology. There's more, of course. You can imagine that you can have a lot of different metrics for a number of customers, and you will find out at some point patterns in that behavior. So shopping is obviously, but even like simple things like how many times you go on a website or such, there's patterns in that. Finding out anomalies against these patterns is what is going to help you in understanding, okay, this is when to engage with the customer. The other thing is finding the impact of individuals within your network of users or customers. Specifically in telco, what we found out is there's always what we call like mobile leaders or social leaders. Those are people who have a lot of in and outbound calls. They're the alpha males, so to speak, of your user population. What you see is if these people churn away, if they switch telco provider, go to somewhere else, they actually take other customers with them. They are influential in some way. And obviously knowing and understanding through graph analysis based on these same metrics, what could be the possible network effect of an event happening with one individual profile on a number of other profiles is going to help you. And lastly, rather than having a customer coming in and say, well, I've been doing segmentation exercises for 10 years and I know in advance you have 6 different types of customers. No, you have 1 million different types of customers if you have 1 million customers. But you can obviously, using all these metrics, have very simple automated segmentation or clustering happening just because people share the same metric values. We call that the customer DNA. So it's realized in our product. But I think what is important there is it moves the needle a bit from the exploratory Hadoopy data lake style of every project, every research project becomes an application implementation project on its own into, okay, we have a platform that profiles customers, calculates these metrics, and we can use that for a multitude of different use cases. So that we're not in the trap of spending too much time with technology, but have our data scientists empowered by having access to better data, more relevant data, real-time updated data, and I think that is actually that on its own is already a very big possible benefit that Hadoop can bring to you. With that being said, I'll open the floor to any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Can you elaborate on maybe if models collide, you have like a churn model that maybe says there's likelihood of churn, but there's also an upsell opportunity, how you kind of manage that conflict?
Yeah. Actually, it goes back to the, so the question is, if you have multiple scoring models and they might provide you with conflicting signals, so to speak. I think what is interesting there is if you have these individual level metrics, there might be metrics which are shared across different predictive models. So your age could have an impact. And what we have in the rule engine, that's specific to our product, but in the rule engine, we actually can, if you make an offer based on a combination of scores, you can use the success of that offer to learn on the impact of the driver metrics to see, okay, if I have the choice between these two different offers which are being defined by two different scores, what is the best performing decision switch, so to speak. Yeah? So you learn actually from the behavior of your customer. You could call it A/B testing. It's on the offer level that we're doing it, but it's actually the same thing. There's always a marketing and a data science people around which tries to understand the logic in these decisions, of course, as well. We found that to be much more powerful than black box modeling, where you just learn from behavior and you do the Amazon style of thing. It performs well, this way of working. The problem is if you have an issue, you cannot explain it to your user. So, okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you.